Good morning, everyone. My name is Yuna Davina, and I will be sharing the mind mapping for global economy and international business class. This class is taught by Professor Roy Sembel and Professor Yulita Susanti. The course is divided into 7 chapters according to my versions of the mind mapping. There are the introduction, tariff and quota discussion, international finance management, issues in global economy, open economy macro, international firm strategy, and marketing in global firm. You can see it all in here for the total mind mapping, and we are going to discuss it chapter by chapter. In the introductions to the global economy, we first discuss about events that changes the GDP compositions throughout the history. There are industrial revolutions, 1 to 4. There are World War I and II, and also there are Korean War and Vietnam War. There's also the Cold War between the US and Russia in the 80s that changes the compositions of the GDP. And then there's also the new economy. When we are talking about the new economy, there are 3 pillars that supports them. First is the cost reduction. When we are talking about cost in here, it means the interaction cost and also the transformation cost. And better customer service, because nowadays the customer has more options. There's also the concept of anytime and anywhere, just one click away, that supports the better customer service. And then there's transparency and competitions. With informations nowadays is readily accessible from anywhere, it is important for the business in the new economy to be transparent to win the competitions. The position of Indonesia in the world economy currently in the nominal GDP, we are on rank 16 in nominal. But when we are considering the purchasing power parity, we had a better position, which we are already on the top 10, we are number 7. Now, based on Paul Romer's path of economic growth, Indonesia is considered on the right track already because we are investing in infrastructures, in human being, and also focusing on innovations. Now, the tariff and quota. The definitions of tariff is, well, basically it's the tax on import, while quota is the limitation on import quality. Import quantity. Now, tariff is usually higher in lower income countries when compared to the high income countries. This is because mostly the government revenue in the lower income countries still relies a lot on the tariffs. The differences between quotas and tariffs, quotas does not generate revenue for the governments, and increases in foreign productivity do not result in lower prices with quota, but they do with tariff. And what are the similarities then? Well, both quota and tariff can reduce imports and domestic consumption, while on the other hand, they can increase domestic prices and domestic productions. Now, for the international finance management, we discuss about the risk when a business is going international. There is the cross-cultural risk, which means usually dealings with the culture, the human behavior from one country to another. The commercial risk, usually talking about the market potentials. Country risk, for example, the political stability for a country, economic structures. And then there's this currency risk. Now, this currency risk, we are taking a special notions of it. This currency risk needs to be managed because it means we are managing the business loss that could be triggered by the higher or lower exchange rate between different currencies involved in trade agreement. There are several ways to manage this currency risk. One of it was forward contract. Forward contract is agreement to purchase goods in the future at a predefined exchange rate. In a sense, it's like a hedging. Now, what are the factors that are affecting the currency rate? Yeah, There are factors that affecting the currency rate. First is the demand and supplies of goods and service, which is influenced by the relative inflation rate, relative income, and government restrictions on flow and goods and service. There is also the demand and supplies of securities, which is influenced by the relative interest rate and the government restrictions on capital flows. And there is also the risk perception, which could trigger the demand and supplies in the foreign currencies and domestic currencies. Now, these are the factors that affecting the currency rate. For this, when we are discussing about this currency risk management, we are discussing about the MESA case, which is a very good case to elaborate on the importance of managing the currencies when you are dealing with a different countries for your business. Now, for the issues in global economy, we are discussing about the recent case of the Silicon Valley Bank and comparing it to the subprime mortgage case, which happens back in 2008. The background for both cases is quite different because the Silicon Valley Bank, the background was the increasing interest rate and the startup winter period. While for the subprime mortgage, the background was the real estate bubble burst and the subprime lender failed to pay the loan. The impact to the global economy for both of these cases, the Silicon Valley case affected mostly the startup industries, while the subprime mortgage it affected, of course, mostly on the property sectors. The impact in Indonesia, fortunately, so far the Silicon Valley case does not have direct impact to Indonesia economy because most of the Indonesian startup does not have cooperations with the Silicon Valley, or in a sense, they do not reserve their money in the Silicon Valley Bank. Well, but for the subprime mortgage case back in 2008, Indonesia got hit quite badly because it affected the inflations and the countries that has a trade agreement with the Indonesia at that time. Okay, so for the open economy macro, we basically discussing on the difference between developing countries and advanced countries in a sense of economy. To make this easier to imagine, we are discussing the case of sick kids in Qatar. This case is about business cooperations between advanced country, in this case is Canada, and developing countries, in this case is Qatar. From the case, we know that there are country gap that needs to be considered when you are doing the business. The difference, again, the difference in the economy, the difference in the human behavior, difference in culture, that those are will define the cooperations between the two countries. And there's also alignment to be made. For example, how big is the scaling up of the business that we are talking about here? How much investments are each party are willing to make? How long is the period of the cooperations going to be? And when all is done, there is the transition. There is also the transitions that needs to be taken care of, because dealing with two countries, meaning dealing with a two probably business behavior, those needs to be settled first. For the international firm strategy, we're discussing on the objective when a firm goes international. Usually, the objective of the international, the go international strategy would be efficiency, especially in a cost. When we're talking about the global value chain, it could save up the cost to make it efficient. The flexibility, in a sense of whether a country, whether a business needs to use the local approach and how flexible they are to it. And then there's the learning. Of course, when you have businesses in several countries, there are learning from each of the local approach that you could use to later on leverage the business itself. Now, there is the strategy in a sense of organizational structures for the international firm strategies. Home replication is when the firm uses the competitive approach it developed in its home market to enter the international market. Examples of this are Toys R Us. The localization strategies is when the firm develops separate operating subsidiaries, each of which develops products to meet the specific needs of international market it serves. The global standardization strategies is when a firm develops a standardized product that it sells to all customers throughout the world. For example, Panasonic. And then the last one is the transnational strategy, in which the firm attempts to combine the benefits of global integration to achieve low cost with the benefits of being locally responsive. The last one is about the marketing in global firm. Now, usually the global marketing strategies will cover three things: the positioning, which means how a firm would like to be seen by its market. Are they affordable, for example? Are they a premium? That's just one of the examples. The market segmentations, usually dealing with the target customers that a firm will need to create the opportunity from. And then the element of the marketing program. When we are talking about the global marketing strategy, sometimes most of the time, I will have to say, the element of the marketing program needs to be flexible, adjusting it to the local countries. For example, the usage of the local language for branding, for marketing campaign, and so on and so forth. Now there are two strategies: standardizations and adaptations for these global firms. Standardizations it exemplifies the global integrations and is more appropriate in global industries. It pursues when similar market segments exist across the countries, while the adaptations exemplifies the local responsiveness and is more appropriate in multi-domestic industries. Adaptation is pursued when there are distinct national preference or distinctions in laws and regulations. Now, of course, the advantages of the standardizations would be the cost reductions and improved planning and control, while the advantages of the adaptations would be meeting the needs of the customer more precisely and the unique appeal it has from one country to another. The global branding enhances the efficiency and effectiveness of marketing programs, that facilitates the ability to charge the premium prices, increases the firm's leverage with resellers, stimulates brand loyalty, and inspire trust and confidence in product. The examples of the well-known global brands, for example, Barbie in toys, Cadbury in foods, Star Wars when we're talking about entertainments or movie, and then also the sports stars like David Beckham himself is actually a global branding. Now, that's my wrap up on the mind mapping. I would like to close the mapping with one of the quotes that I found relevant for this class. Money makes the world go round, but people make the world go forward. Thank you. Good morning, all.